A headline I woke up to this morning, and as always, when the radio goes off, the alarm at 6 o'clock, I'm never quite awake. I thought it said they're going to pay you some more money back off your electricity bill if you don't use the electricity services, the expensive ones, particularly the items in your house, the appliances that are the most expensive, between 5 and 6 today. And then I got to work and looked at the headlines, and it turns out it's true. The Times National Grid to pay households for not turning the kettle on, amongst other things, the hob, the oven, I would imagine, the washing machine. But how does it all work? And is it available to everyone? Because there's different noises about different companies, depending on which provider you're with, and whether you've got a smart meter or not, whether that's going to affect it as well. Well, I'm delighted that we're joined by Dr. Johnson Fernandes, who is the CEO of equiwatt, which is an independent company that's working with the National Grid on this demand flexibility service that the National Grid launched last year. Good morning, Dr. Fernandes.
Morning.
Nice to have you with us, and thanks for coming on to talk about this. So, question one really is, how does it work?
Let's start by saying what the National Grid service is. So it's a really innovative service called the Demand Flexibility Service, which has been launched really to help the UK come out of its shortage of electricity supplies, really. So how it works is the National Grid provides incentives to households and general energy consumers who can reduce their demand at those peak times which are typically between 4 and 8 p.m. really. And how do you reduce that peak time usage is by avoiding the use of high intensive appliances. It could be your dishwasher, it could be a washing machine, or even your electric car charger. And during those event times, if any of those appliances are operating, then make sure you turn them off. So the National Grid makes this work by working with energy suppliers. There are only about 7 of the 26 reported who are energy suppliers. Rest of them are independents like equiwatt. So the energy suppliers and independents like equiwatt, what we do is we enable, by means of an app, we enable consumers to understand when are those peak time events by sending notifications or emails, and consumers who connect their smart meters to our app and respond to those notifications, we measure their energy demand reduction using smart meters, and we effectively reward them.
So I have a smart meter. I don't know if I'm with one of the companies that's part of the pilot scheme. I haven't had a text or an email at this point, so I'm assuming not at this point of the morning. But if I wanted to still participate, go around and turn off the expensive appliances, it's the heating, isn't it, like you say, and the washing machine and that kind of thing. I don't think my smart speaker or my Wi-Fi router is going to make much of a difference. Would I have to download your app to do it in conjunction with my smart meter then?
Yes, that's right. So you can find out the equiwatt app by searching it on your preferred app store. So it's EQUIWATT. And we make it really easy to connect your smart meter. And back to your original question, right? It is open to all of the households who have a connected smart meter. There are about 14 million smart meters that could benefit from this service. Download the app, connect your smart meter, respond to peak time event notifications by reducing your usage, and you get your rewards.
Wouldn't it not work? And I know there'll be some listeners thinking, well, I don't use the internet particularly. We hear it quite a lot on the radio. I haven't got an app. I don't have a smartphone. But you may have a smart meter, you may not. Surely your consumption is still tracked to an extent anyway, isn't it? If you're not using electricity, like in the daytime, you're using less electricity if you're out of the house. Could people, perhaps not for today, but could people in the future not participate in that way if they don't have the technology to get the app?
In the future, yes, but currently, because the app is the means to connect your smart meter, it forms the only way at this point of time. But there are other energy suppliers who are doing it via email notifications, for example, where your smart meter readings are already getting set to the energy supplier. But for independents out there, like equiwatt, who don't have the smart meter energy data connected, that's the only way at this point of time.
So if I download that and get that on my phone later on, will it tell me in real time or close to real time how much money I might have saved? I don't think, because I haven't been putting my heating on anyway, it's been too expensive, but I don't think the sort of things that I could turn off around my house, not boiling the kettle perhaps is quite a good one because I do drink a lot of tea, but will it tell me how much in sort of pounds and pence probably I will have saved?
It really depends on a energy use case scenario per an individual. We have users who are earning rewards of the value of between £4 to actually £20 per event,
Yeah.
and how it's measured is based on your forecasted usage. So between 4 and 8 p.m., what is your energy usage typically at that point of time? And via the app, what we tell consumers is this is your energy usage predicted. Now, any reduction you go below that usage, you get paid. In terms of how is that measured? Initially, there's no way of predicting that unless an individual participates with equiwatt and reduces the energy demand themselves. So it takes a while, but we give you an indication, within 2 to 3 hours of participating in an event, how much you've reduced and how much is your equivalent payment and rewards.
We've been anticipating for a while, Doctor, that the need for extra energy supplies. We were warned about potential blackouts during the winter a few weeks and months ago. Now, that hasn't happened, fortunately, but I'm reading about the coal-fired power stations, the traditional old coal-fired power stations that are on standby for extra energy usage. And let's be honest, with how cold it is today, and indeed the last couple of weeks, you can see why this is needed. How does it actually work with your system? Does it stop sort of the reserves being used up, gas reserves being used up, and switching to the coal if the level remains low enough with people not using energy between 5 and 6?
Yeah, that's the thing. So it's this kind of service is a replacement to those, to putting those coal plants on standby, really. It's a phenomenal shift, generational shift to how consumers can collectively reduce energy demand simultaneously for an hour period. And when it's extreme strain on the grid, when the supplies are low, so that we don't need to put those coal power plants, which are coming to the end of life, back onto a supply, really.
How is this going to look in the future? Obviously, it's very cold at the moment. It's January, so peak time for everything that's being on. People are trying to stay warm. We're not eating a lot of salads at this time of year because you need something warming when you have your tea. Do you see this becoming more regular rather than just a winter thing, Dr. Fernandes? Is this something we should be looking to try and do a bit of conservation all 12 months of the year, do you think?
Yeah, so definitely. So I think, as I mentioned, it's a generational shift. It's a behavioral shift to how energy is perceived and consumed by consumers. And the key thing is flexibility. So by consumers being flexible about when and how they use their energy, what you can do is the collective impact can not just protect us from shortage of supplies, but we can enable that flexibility to serve when there's excess wind energy or solar in the grid, when the prices of energy go negative or those energy gets wasted. So this kind of scheme of flexibility is part of the future energy grid scenario. Is going to be the norm. It has to be the norm, really, if we want to reach our net zero targets. And believe it or not, consumers coming together is a much better, cheaper solution than building standby polluting power plants, really.
Is net zero achievable in your mind in the targets that the government have set? Because a lot of people listening will be sceptical about that just by virtue of the fact that we have to have coal-fired power stations on standby for in case we need extra electricity, extra energy this winter.
Yeah, that's a really hard question.
It might not be quite your area, but it is important that the government has committed to net zero, and there's still rows about how many windmills, for example, will be able to onshore or offshore. Some people are very sceptical about it altogether. For it to be go on, sorry, after you.
The reason I say it's hard is because my personal opinion is that, for us to reach net zero, consumers need to be more aware. They need to be educated. And right now, it is limited. And consumers are, especially in terms of how they consume the energy, how they participate in services like this, and how really peak time demand affects the level of carbon CO2 emissions on the grid. So there's that shift in how consumers need to be educated and be made aware. Once we are all aware, or at least a majority of them, that's when I believe net zero is actually achievable, because we all, as consumers, in our businesses, in our office spaces, in our homes, It's that collective behavior change. It's that is that education, is that awareness, is what it will take for us to reach net
And
zero.
us knowing exactly what our consumption is. And if you do have a smart meter, and I'm obsessed with when it goes from green to orange. I watch it all the time now to check my usage. That can only help that mindset become, so widespread to let that happen, do you think?
Yes, that's what we're trying to do within the app and many other companies as well, giving consumers and even energy companies the tools, right, of how, your energy usage changes every 30 minutes, how effectively by reducing your demand, we're able to reward you, making that really clear and visible. That's part of the education. For example, when we run those events, we have consumers who repeatedly tell us that every event that they participate, their understanding of how they consume energy at peak times, their understanding of their energy usage improves. Another example is, when most smart meters come with the in-home display, right, which tells you, what is the live energy use you're using. So if you go around turning off individual appliances, you can see the live energy use reduce, so you can measure the impact.
Yeah.
So that's a really cool way of measuring your impact, really.
Well, I'm going to give it a go tonight. I'm going to get the equiwatt app. I've got my smart meter. I don't think I still wouldn't have had the heating on, so I don't think it's going to be a big saving for me. But it'll be interesting to see the data as it comes out. Thanks so much for joining us to talk about that, and I'm sure you'll be following the data from around the country with much interest at 5 o'clock this evening, Dr. Fernandes.
Yes, definitely. Every bit counts, so glad to have you on board.
I'll give it a go. Dr. Johnson Fernandes, the CEO of equiwatt, the company that's working with the National Grid on the demand flexibility service.